Hi everyone, happy Tuesday. I hope you all are doing well this week. If you listened to my reflection video a couple of weeks ago, you remember that I talked about the difference between living our lives as human beings versus human doings. And my reflection this week is gonna kind of share a similar theme with that, but is actually inspired by an episode of a podcast that we're listening to for our young adult book group this week. So the podcast is called Abiding Together, and it's a space where three women come together and reflect and share and just grow in their journey of faith together. So the particular episode that we're listening to and we'll be discussing this week at our book group is called Abiding versus Striving. Abiding versus striving. So those two distinct kind of ways of being, ways of going through our lives that I think we often confuse with one another. And in hearing it, I think it was kind of similar to that distinction between being and doing that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. So they root their reflection in this episode on the Gospel of John chapter 15, where Jesus is speaking to his disciples and he says, "Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing." So we have this really beautiful scripture that illuminates our relationship with Christ, what our relationship with Christ is called to be. And this scripture leads these women into a conversation about the difference between abiding and striving. And so they talk about how striving is what most of our world is telling us to do. It's all about productivity. It's kind of just like the constant struggle, kind of just always going on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, trying to accomplish and to do, and like continually struggling to prove our worth. And so if we constantly exist in a striving mentality, we're constantly trying to prove our worth, maybe to ourselves, maybe to others. And when we're abiding, we are trusting first and foremost in who God is, and at the same time trusting who we are in relationship to him. And so that distinction is really important, and Christ calls us to abide, to live in that trust in simply being with him in relationship. And one of the women in particular pointed out how her experience kind of always seeking this sense of self-reliance was how she lived her life striving, and in that striving mentality. And in that striving, there's a lack of trust because we're kind of doubting that God will show up, doubting that God will provide. So instead we're saying, well, I'll just take care of it all myself just in case. And so they share how in contrast, when we're abiding, we are deeply connected with the heart of God, and we're open to receiving from him rather than simply trying to take care of it all on our own. And this woman shared a quote from St. Augustine, and this quote really resonated with me. It really struck me. He says, "God is always trying to give good things to us, but our hands are too full to receive them." I'll read that again. Just think about that in your own life for a moment. God is always trying to give good things to us, but our hands are too full to receive them. And so I think this invites us to think about what am I holding on to that is not giving me the space to receive from God. And so I'd invite you into reflection on that this week. Kind of what are the things that I'm holding on to, maybe too tightly, maybe just simply things I'm holding on to that I don't have the capacity to hold on to right now. How am I striving to be self-reliant instead of letting go and abiding and kind of opening myself up to what God is asking me to receive today? So I would definitely recommend listening to the podcast. If you're interested, I'll include the link below the video. So again, the podcast is called Abiding Together, and this particular episode is from season 1, and the episode title is Abiding versus Striving. So I hope you all have a really wonderful week, and I will look forward to talking with you again soon.